Good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Callers. I'm Father Doug Jeffers, and I'm here with
Father James.
And we have a guest with us this morning, Sam O'Meara. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Father.
How are you doing this
Sam,
morning?
happy Friday to you.
Thank you. Happy Friday to you guys as well.
Very good. Well, we're glad to have you with us this morning. So just about a month ago on Pentecost Sunday, Sam was received into the full communion of the Catholic Church and confirmed here at St. Louis after completing our RCIA program, the Rite of Christian Initiation of Adults. And so, Sam, you were raised a Presbyterian, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And Sam has recently become a Catholic. So can you tell us a little bit about what was it that drew you to be interested in Catholicism in the first place?
Definitely. So it started when I was dating my now husband. We were talking about religion and what that meant to us. And if we were going to be more serious, that's a really big discussion to have. My husband was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school, and he's very strong in his faith. Mm-hmm. And so we had many discussions about what that meant to him and what it meant to me and why do we believe certain ways. And one thing I came to better understand through those was that I did have an interest in the Catholic Church, specifically around the intentionality of everything. I'm very much a why person, and mm-hmm. that's one thing that I didn't realize you could really ask.
Sure.
So through that process, I decided that I was going to convert after we were married. And then going through pre-Cana kind of shifted from me doing that for my family and kind of for myself to me really making this choice to convert for me.
So then after you got married, you kind of thought more seriously about, mm-hmm. This idea of becoming Catholic, right? And so how did you do that here at St. Louis? You started going to church here, and then kind of take us through the process of actually getting engaged with RCIA.
We met every Sunday from 11 to 1 p.m. after the 9:30 Mass. So that was something that was kind of nice too, especially if you're doing this on your own, that we all sat together during Mass. And so you knew people you could sit with, you had kind of a spot where you could meet everyone. So I think that kind of helps pull you in a little bit as well. But for me, the classes, they touched on so many different issues. So we talked about the saints, who is God? We talked about the Holy Trinity and Catholic morality. And we also talked about the actual sacraments and what do they mean and what do they do and what do the words that are spoken actually mean.
Mm-hmm. So as you went through this process and some things were kind of opening up for you, you mentioned earlier that it was, you said the intentionality of Catholicism that kind of was pulling you toward it. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What did that mean, and how did that kind of unfold for you as you went through this process?
So for me, I'm very much a why person.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to ask why and being allowed to ask those questions when I wanted to know something specific, or why do the priests wear this kind of garment instead of that kind, or even just the really simple questions that as someone who didn't grow up Catholic, mm-hmm. you just don't know the answer to. Mm-hmm. So being able to ask those, or ask, why do we kneel at this part? And there's a reason. There's a thought out, specific reason on why we do everything that people mm-hmm. have taken the time to consider. Yeah. And for me, that was very powerful.
2,000 years. We've taken 2,000 years to consider it. So it's like it stood the test of time.
Definitely. But I think that's something that's so impactful.
Sure.
For someone who's coming into Catholicism.
Yeah. You're kind of immersed in a tradition, and you realize that there's a lot that is deep, that there's a lot below the surface there.
Definitely.
That's great. So another question I have is, I know it can be kind of an intimidating thing to walk into an RCIA class. I had that experience myself when I first walked into an RCIA class about, oh man, how long ago was that? Like 11 years ago now. So if there's somebody out there who's thinking, well, I'm kind of interested in Catholicism, I've got some questions, I'd like to explore it, maybe I'm not sure though, and I'm kind of on the fence about coming to a class like that. What would you say to somebody like that?
I would say do it. Give it a try. Just go. See what information you can learn, see the people that you'll meet. And if you decide that that's not the right path for you, that's your choice. But I would say check it out. For me, it was extremely impactful. The people, the information, just having that set aside time and that intentional time mm-hmm. to get to know God better, it's not going to do you any harm to go.
Yeah, part of formation, and this is in all different branches of formation, is that it can't be that you enter into formation and say, absolutely, I'm going to do this. I'm going to become a Catholic. Or when Father Doug and I went to seminary, you don't just go to seminary and say, oh, I'm here to become a priest. I'm going to be a priest. I know it for sure. Well, that's not formation. Formation and discernment is this process by which God continues to reveal his hopes for you, his wishes for you. So if anybody wants to go to RCIA, you don't go to RCIA for sure saying, I'm becoming a Catholic, no doubt about it. No, you go there to listen to what God has to say. And then with time, after each session and prayer and journeying with people, then it gets stronger and stronger and stronger to a point where you say, this is definitely what I'm being called to do. So you're articulating that really well. Were there ever any times where it was kind of a struggle for you to press forward?
Definitely. I mean, I think there are always struggles in your faith as well, but I think in RCIA there's one spot specifically that it wasn't necessarily on the material or on anything we had talked about in class that day. I was just a bit overwhelmed in the sheer volume of information.
Sure.
I'm an accountant. I like to have ABC outlined and progress in chronological order, and this is a lifelong journey. So for me, taking that understanding from I'm in RCIA for 10 months to this is the start of my life as a Catholic was a transformation.
You kind of have that experience of accepting more than you understand. There's a line in G.K. Chesterton somewhere where he says something like, part of what it means to be a Catholic is to accept the startling proposition that something else is wiser than I am, and that there's this whole tradition here and this whole body of teaching which I accept, even though I don't understand all of it, even though I don't even know what all the content of it is, because it would take a lifetime maybe to get into to kind of explore every nook and cranny of what's there. But above all that, there's this kind of confidence, faith, we call it, of accepting the wisdom of a tradition, even though you haven't fathomed the whole thing.
Yeah, we talk about it this way, that, the last line of John's Gospel, it says, and I'm paraphrasing it now, it says, there's so much more that needs to be said, but there aren't enough pages in the world that could sustain what needs to be said. And that's kind of what it's like with our faith. I mean, we come to a point where we've learned a lot of stuff. I mean, through seminary, Father Doug and I, 7 years of learning about philosophy and theology, and still we get to a point where we're like, okay, I'm going to hold this host up now, and I don't know how this happens, but it is the body of Christ. And so even with Father Doug and I, when we're standing there saying Mass, we can't completely apprehend the mystery of God. And I think that's probably the most intriguing thing about Catholicism, is that it's something that cannot be apprehended. It's not an intellectual enterprise. It's a journey. It's a formation exercise. It's a practice in discerning the will of God and turning yourself over to that will. So you kind of did that in miniature. What's it been like after you got confirmed? Have you felt a difference in your life coming back to Mass Sunday after Sunday?
For me, coming back to Mass now, I was a part of the church community before, but now it's part of my family.
Yeah.
And being able to take the communion, it's hard to put into words.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, this is what it's all about, is difficulty in putting it into words. And I think when we come to that point in our spirituality, then we really have kind of accepted the mystery of God for what it is, a mystery, something that we know by faith and not necessarily by sight. So thanks for joining us with Coffee with the Callers this morning. Padre, why don't you send us off?
Thank you for joining us again on Coffee with the Callers. Have a good Friday, and we'll see you on Sunday.